that on now? Am I hearing? Okay. I understand that I was not very audible on the meditation. I'll try to do a little better than this. Good morning. As you see on the handout today, the theme or the title of the speech message is Revelation. And Jim came up to me early this morning and he says, "Are you really going to talk about Revelations?" And I said, no, we're not going there. We're not going there. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. That's right. That's right. The four horsemen have gone out the door. No, we're not going to go. Where the idea came from is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. One of his essays entitled The Oversoul. Ralph Waldo Emerson goes in quite a bit of depth about the idea of revelation. And I was reading it and got inspired and thought I'd like to share some of the ideas that it sparked in me with you this morning. Again, he talks about revelation in a way and contrasts it with what others have thought revelation was in the past. And so this morning what we're going to do is look at what revelation is not, according to Ralph Waldo Emerson, and what revelation is. And then look at a few ways briefly on how we can foster that experience of revelation in our own lives. Ralph Waldo Emerson starts off by saying what revelation is, and then goes back and says it's not this, and then he says again it is this, and contrasts that with, but that would make for a very confusing message, so I'm going to rearrange it a little bit and talk about first all of what it is not, and then talk about what it is, to make it a little easier to follow and a little easier for me to remember what I'm talking about. So Emerson starts out by saying, the popular notion of a revelation is that it is a telling of fortunes. In past oracles of the soul, the understanding seeks to find answers to sensual questions and undertakes to tell from God how long man shall exist, what their hands shall do, and who shall be their company, adding names and dates and places. And so he talks about this idea of an oracle, this idea of knowing the future. That revelation in the past has been known, thought of in the idea that I'm going to find out what the future is. I'm going to know who's going to win the 5th race at Lone Star Park this afternoon. And going back to Oracle, the Oracle of Delphi back in Greece, it was a place where people went to get their questions answered. What they believed was that Apollo dwelt there and asked correctly, and if the correct question was asked, Apollo would tell people what their future would be, and it would let them know what their future was going to be. And this was a long and arduous journey that the person asking the question had to undertake. In the reading I read, it said that the person who wanted to ask the question of Apollo was called a consultant. And the literal meaning, literal definition of the word of consultant is one who seeks counsel. One who seeks counsel. So the next time you have a consultant come to your office and tell you how to do things better, remind him. True meaning of the word consultant is one who seeks counsel. So the consultant, the person is the one who is looking for counsel, the one who's coming to Apollo with a question. And the placement of the Oracle of Delphi was up in the mountains, and so it was a very difficult place to reach. The person who finally got to the place where they said, I've got this question. I've got to know the answer to this question. It's going to be a journey. It's going to be an arduous journey, but I've got to make this trek to the Oracle of Delphi to find out the answer to this question. And so they finally undertake their journey to the Oracle of Delphi. If they are able to reach it, they meet with the people the priests who are serving at the oracle, and they tell them what their question is. And they get interviewed by these priests to find out if their question is really worthy of Apollo paying attention to their question. Not everyone's question is worthy of Apollo's attention. So they may have traveled all this way, burned in their mind is, I've got to know the answer to this question, and get there, and Apollo says, no, I don't really care if you use crunchy peanut butter or creamy. Just that question is not one that I will address. And so they go away unhappy, not knowing. If they do get chosen, if they are decided that question is worthy of that attention, they're prepped in a way. They're taught how to ask this question. They can't just get up there and say what they might say, ask a question in their own words. They're prepped beforehand to ask the question in such a way that the oracle will understand what the question is. And in truth, what's happening is the question is being framed in such a way that whatever the answer is that comes, it seems to answer the question that is being asked. And so they're being prepped ahead of time to say, okay, this is how you got to ask this question. This is how you need to frame the words so that the oracle can understand what you are asking. And once they've been prepped in this, and it says they get into a very aroused and meditative state, just a frenzy, a kind of a frantic, shamanic frenzy as they head towards the oracle to ask their question. And they propose this question to what's called a Pythia. The Pythia was a young female virgin whose life is dedicated to answering the questions of the oracle. And they say in there, they describe what her lifestyle is like. Basically, she's living in this cave where there are these gases that are flowing through, and basically a lot of the sources, what they suggested was that she was stoned. Basically, she lived her life just stoned, just sitting there and waiting for these questions to come and to provide answers to these questions, and totally out of her mind. And when the question was asked then, the question was finally asked of her, what she would do is go into a seizure or type of gibberish, unintelligible gibberish, spitting out exactly what it was, and nobody was sure, but there was somebody there who was interpreting what she was saying. And say, oh, yes, 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 crunchy is the way. That's what she said. That's what she said. Crunchy is the way to go. And so, as a result, the person would walk away feeling satisfied. Oh, Apollo has answered my question. The Pythia has went into her state, figured out and heard what Apollo said, spit it out in such a way that only the priest could interpret, and I have my answer. And so they went away, carrying out and changing their life as a result of this answer, going forward and applying this in their future, saying, this is going to affect my future. This question that I had is going to affect my future. Now, in contrast to that, Emerson suggests that revelation is not the telling of the future, but that revelation is the reality, the realization that we and God are one. It is that revelation, that revealing to each of us, that within us is God. God expresses, I am, and as a result, we are, and God is us. And I'd like to look at some of the differences between the different stages that were taking place in the past, and show a little bit different of how we look at it today. First of all, the person who had the question to ask would go up there, and they had to get a question from God. They saw their gods as being distant. They saw their gods as being far away and totally disinterested in their lifestyle, totally disinterested in whatever they were doing in life. And so the only way they could get the god's attention was to appease the god. Of course, the consultant coming up to the Oracle of Delphi had to bring gifts. They had to bring things to appease the gods and make them take the time to pay attention to them. And so they see their gods as being off, kind of disinterested, off having their own fun, doing the kind of things, and not really worrying about what you and I are doing or what our lives are doing, unless we bring enough to them that their attention could be distracted and brought to us and say, oh, okay, what's your question? What's your question? And so they were looking to get something from God. They were looking to get something from their gods, some kind of answer, some kind of attention from their gods. And in contrast, what Emerson says is that for the soul's communication of truth is the highest event in nature, since it then does not give somewhat from itself, but it gives itself. It gives itself. So when we come to God, we don't look for God to give us something. We don't come to ask God to give us something, to impart something to us, to finally pay attention to our lives and maybe take the time to notice us. Instead, revelation is the idea, the realization that God is us, that God at all moments, in every moment, we and God are one. And that revelation that there is nothing that can separate that. There's nothing that can change that or make that go away. We and God are one. And so when we come to God, when we look for the revelation that Emerson's talking about, it is that idea that God is us. God shares God's self with us and is us. Next, the supplicant, again, went through an arduous and journey and was never really sure whether his question was going to be addressed. He got up to all that place and still wasn't sure if his question was going to be worthy of the attention of Apollo. And in contrast with that, Emerson says that God is within all of us. He says, as it is present in all persons, so it is in every period of life. It is adult, already in the infant man. And so what he's saying in here is that God is in each one of us. There's no difference. There's no possibility of one of us being left, except for Scott. God is in each one of us. And one of the things he's talking about in this paragraph when he talks about God being in all persons is about children. And saying that even in children, God is whole. God is complete. And what he says is, if I come to children, my children or dealing with others who are younger, if I come to them with the idea that I'm going to get my way because I'm bigger, because I have more money, because I have authority in this situation, I'm probably going to create friction. Because the soul that's in that child will see me coming from a place where I'm not coming from my soul and rebel and want to take on. And he suggests instead, if I come to this person, if I come to this child, if I come to this other person I'm dealing with, from the place that we are both one in God. We both share that same soul. We will share that same place. And so we come on even ground. There'll be less resistance. There'll be less friction. There'll be less rebellion from that person because they don't come thinking, I'm going to control you. They don't come thinking, seeing you come. And we are intuitive people. We are intuitive people. We can tell where somebody's coming from when they're approaching us. And if they're approaching us with the idea that they're better than us and they're about to take charge, there's something inside of us that just, no matter who they are, we don't want to listen. We just don't want to listen. But if they come from the idea that we are one, we share the same soul, we're on the same ground, let's talk. Let's talk. And that's what Emerson talks about. This revelation is in each one of us equally and completely and in every age and every time of our lives. After that, the Pythia gets the question. She takes it and goes off through her little scenario, gets a little stoned, starts spitting out gibberish, and you're not really quite sure what she's saying, but then there's somebody that's supposed to know exactly what she's saying and translate it for us. And in contrast to that, what Emerson suggests is that there is a knowing, that revelation comes to us not in words, but in a knowing within our soul. He says, the nature of these revelations is the same. They are perceptions of the absolute law. They are solutions of the soul's own questions. They do not answer the questions which the understanding asks. The soul answers never by words, but by the thing itself that is inquired after. The soul answers never by words, but by the thing itself that is inquired after. And so this whole idea that we don't have to sit around and figure out what words are coming to us. We don't look for, when we come to God, we don't look for words to say, okay, Scott, you need to turn left at the next light because your fortune is going to be that way. Instead, there is a knowing. There is that quiet place within our souls where there is a knowing. And God speaks to that place. And the suggestion here, I think, is that all of our questions, because when they say they do not answer the questions which the understanding asks, the soul answers never by words, but by the thing itself that is inquired after. And so the questions, all of our questions, I think, finally funnel down into just one. Am I one with God? Am I one with God? All of our concerns, all of our worries, all of our things that we're looking at in life and trying to figure out and trying to sort out, all point back to this idea, am I one with God? And the answer to that, I am one with God, is the solution to all those questions that we have. It is the answer that we need to all those questions. Because when I know I am one with God, I'm at peace. And the questions, the turmoil, the rumblings inside of me subside. Because I know, and I know what I need to know, that I'm one with God. And there's nothing else that needs to be. When the oracle gives the advice to the person, the consultant who's come there, basically what they're supposed to do is go forward now into the future. This is aimed at changing their future. This is aimed at giving them some direction on what to do for their future. And they go from there, changing how they're going to live. There's a famous Oedipus, the king, where the person is told that his son would end up coming back and killing him and marrying his mother, and he tried everything he could do to make it not happen, and yet it happened. And so these oracles are all aimed at letting you know what your future is so that you can take the action you need to realize that future. And again, Emerson, in contrast to that, Emerson talks about living in the now. Emerson talks about living in the not being focused on the future, not being focused on who we might be or where we might go or what we might do with our lives. He says, but we must pick no locks. We must pick no locks. We must check this low curiosity. An answer in words is delusive. It is really no answer to the questions you ask. Do not require a description of the countries toward which you sail. Do not require a description of the countries towards which you sail. The description does not describe them. And tomorrow you arrive there and you know them by inhabiting them. You know them by inhabiting them. This whole idea that we can't know who we're going to be or what we're going to be. I mean, when you think about it, people have told us different ideas on what it's going to be like when we grow older. What aging is going to be like, what it is we're going to experience as we get. And for those of us, which is all of us, who have gotten older, because we're all at the same pace, we realize it didn't describe it to us. We didn't know. We had some inkling about, okay, what capabilities or what things might happen, but we didn't know what the experience was. We didn't know what the experience was of being this age at this time. We had to be there. We had to move into that place. And in the same way spiritually, as I grow spiritually, as I mature spiritually and come to know this revelation more clearly and more openly, as I mature spiritually, I don't know what that looks like until I get there. Some people can describe it to you, can tell us, actions, some of your reactions will change, some, behaviors that used to be there may not consume you anymore, different things like that. But we really can't know what it's like to be that person until we get there. And that's what Emerson is saying. This revelation is about now. It's about this moment, living in this moment and saying, being who we are today. Now, visualization, there's a power in that. There's a power in visualizing things for our lives and moving towards them. But I think what Emerson is suggesting is that we need to keep a looser hold on that vision that we have to let God improve it. Let God change it, let God improve it. My experience is that when I've tried to have an idea of what might be the future, what I might be able to experience, what I might be able to do, I usually undersell God. And when I move forward and I get myself in that place, I'm like, wow, this is what it's like. And I find myself experiencing and able to do things that I never thought were possible. And so we don't go to God with questions, direct questions saying, what's this going to be like? Where am I supposed to go? Who am I supposed to be? But instead, allow ourselves to live in that revelation. Allow ourselves to take time to remind ourselves, I am one with God. And the energy that results from that takes us in the direction we need to be. It takes us in the direction to live out that reality, to live out that revelation in our lives. Now, Emerson doesn't talk indirectly about anything on how to go about making this revelation more real, how to make this revelation happen more readily. But he does talk about some things that I'm going to pull out from that to suggest that might be ways that we can improve and expand our experience of the reality that we and God are one. In one of the writings he says, in these communications, in this revelation, the power to see is not separated from the will to do, but the insight proceeds from obedience, and the obedience proceeds from a joyful perception. The insight proceeds from obedience, and the obedience proceeds from a joyful perception. In other words, that play out, I can't sit back and say, okay, you show me what I'm supposed to be doing, and then I'll do it. We lose out that way. And that I'm there more often than I want to say. But it doesn't work. And basically, again, like all this, it's not about being wrong or doing it the wrong way, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. If I sit back and wait, I'm going to be sitting back and waiting. And I'm going to be sitting back and waiting and not going anywhere. Instead, what he suggests is that two things. First of all, a joyful perception. If I maintain a joyful perception, if I maintain a look at life where I believe life works, I believe life works, that life is worth my investment. Life is worth living with all that I am. I maintain a joyful perception about life, the fact that God is, and that God is all that God needs to be for me to live all of my life. Maintaining that joyful perception. It means avoiding those negative things in our lives, grief unprocessed, sadness wallowed in maybe, or grudges held on to stubbornly. When we do those kind of things, we limit that joyful perception. When that joyful perception will still try to rise, but we'll tamp it down. So most of the time when we hold on to those negative things, it's because we're afraid of that joyful perception. We're afraid of that energy. We're afraid of that light. It keeps coming brightly into our eyes. But if we're going to experience this, if we're going to know revelation, if we're going to know that we and God are one, maintaining this joyful perception by keeping ourselves clear of those things that might block it are important. And then he says obedience. Now, I don't know about you, but I usually chafe at the word obedience. I like the word amendable. It's a better euphemism than obedience. But what he suggests is being obedient to the light we have. Being obedient to the light we have. If there are things we know that when we practice, the light opens and we're able to see better, we're able to the revelation is clearer that we and God are one, then take time to carry out those practices. And if there are those practices that we do that limit that cause us to wander away from that light, that cause us to dim that light, if there are practices like that, avoid those. Being obedient to the light we have. We may not know everything today. We'll never know everything. But if I can be obedient to the light I have, I move forward. And then it says again, and it builds on itself, then my joyful perception becomes brighter. And as my joyful perception becomes brighter, I'm freer to be obedient to more light. And as I'm obedient to more light, my joyful perception expands. And so revelation continues to expand and to grow in our lives. The other thing he talks about, another way he talks about that I think can be used to improve our ability to experience revelation is living in the now. Living in the now. We've all, or many of us, I think, have read several authors on what living in the now, Eckhart Tolle and such, in this whole idea of living now. And so I'd like to just augment that with what Emerson says about it. The moment the doctrine of immortality is separately taught, man is already fallen. In the flowing of love, in the adoration of humility, there is no question of continuance. No inspired man ever asks this question or condescends to these evidences. For the soul is true to itself. The soul is true to itself. And the man in whom it is shed abroad cannot wander from the present, which is infinite, to a future which would be finite. Living in the now. The whole idea of staying here now. There is the humility, the adoration of humility. I love that phrase. When I am humble enough to be in the now, because and now is the only real that there is. There is no future. Now is the only, and when I'm humble enough to be in that place, I'm able to experience adoration. I'm able to experience wonder and awe when I look at the world. When I'm not in that humble place, when I'm in the future or in the past, the beauty that is around me I miss. The beauty that is around me I miss, and I can't enjoy the adoration of humility because I'm focused elsewhere. And their energy is dragging me elsewhere, and so I can't take it in. I can't see the beauty that is around me. And the flowing of love. Again, love is all about now. I love now. I am love now. And so he talks about the fact that we cannot wander from the present, which is infinite. I don't know about you. There's been times where I've been in that place where I know this oneness with God. And all of a sudden, this little voice comes in and says, now, how do we hold on to this? how do we make this last forever? And then, gone. The moment is gone. And if I can stymie that, if I can stall that thought and just enjoy in the now, being in that place, one with God, then that revelation, the truth of God's oneness with me, expands and grows and is more evident into my life. We are one with God. That is a reality in our lives. And as Emerson said, it is an experience that we live now. It is an experience that all of us live in everything that we do.